All right, guys, at this point, you should have the box assembled with the axle, the crank arm, and the little twig here, I think he called it, and the spacer. I called it the handle, I believe is what I called it in mine. But anyway, you should have those four parts created and then attached in the assembly at this point. If you right click on Revolute, you should be able to animate that, loop it, and watch uh, the crank arm turn as that rotates if everything is fastened correctly. What I want to show you in this video is I want to show you how we can make a drawing of the new parts that we made all together. It's going to be one of the things you have to do for your portfolio, for your automata with your parts that you've created. All right. So let's jump right in. Let's hit the plus button down here to create a new drawing. Use your title block that you have customly created. All right. That has your name, your information. That should automatically load for you with information at the bottom that will auto-populate. Now, before we start inserting stuff, I want to change something just to make sure that we have enough space on this particular document. So I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to exit out of, uh, actually, we can go ahead and exit out of this as well. I want to kind of zoom out a little bit, look at our sheet. We need a bigger sheet for all the parts we're going to put on this. So we're going to click on our sheet tab over here, right click on sheet one, and look at its properties. We do want the scale for this to be 1:1, but we want to up the size of this sheet to a B size sheet. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a little bit more space to put all of our parts that we're going to need for this particular drawing that you're going to submit. Okay, so let's start adding our parts. One of the parts that we're going to put on there are the things that you have created today, right? You're going to need the crank arm, the crank handle, or the twig, I think he calls it in the video. You're also going to need the shaft, right? And then the spacers. Those are the four parts that I want to be in this drawing. Now, I do not need a front, top, side, and isometric because these parts are so simple. I just need a front view, a top view, and an isometric that's shaded with dimensions. And I'll show you how that's going to look. I'll just kind of go down the list here. I'm going to put the shaft on the far side over here on this in this area because I'm going to actually scale it down and show you how to do that. Okay, so let's click on the shaft. Let's insert it over here on the right side, and then we'll do a top view of it, which would be longer, right? It's 1:1. We might have to move some stuff around, and that's okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on this and we're going to get our isometric. And it's okay that it's kind of going off the side of the sheet for right now. What we're going to do is we're going to get out of this projected view by clicking on this. And we're going to move a couple of these things around to give us some more space. And move that up. Move this down a little bit. We'll go there. And now we can move this down to fit it on the sheet a little bit better. Now, I want all of this space over here for my other parts, but this thing just is eating up all kinds of sheet. So what I want to do is I want to put it over here where it would go, but I want to right click on it, look at its properties, and over here under scale, what I want to do is I want to change it to a 1:2, and notice it will note that for us. So everybody looking at this sheet, we know it's a 1:1, but this drawing is a 1:2. There's just not any need for it to be that large. Okay, I want the isometric views also to have a shaded view to them. So I right click on them, show hide, show shaded view. And that's going to give me the color version of what it looks like in my drawing. Now, obviously, I'm going to add dimensions to this, right? How long is it? Uh, and what is the diameter? Those are really the only two things that you would need to know about that part to draw it. So any dimensions that you need. I'm not going to dimension anything else in this video. You know how to dimension. I'll allow you to do that, but you need to have your dimensions for full credit. Okay. So we got the one part on there. Let's get out of this sheet view for a second, and let's insert another part. Okay. Let's go to our insert tab here. Click on insert button. We're looking in our part studio for the next thing that we have. So we have the shaft. We can put in the crank arm, the crank handle. I really don't care the order as long as you have everything in there, right? So we're going to drag, we're going to click on this, bring it in, and it should give us a front view that looks something like this, right? We can come up, get our top view of it, and then click on it again and bring it over here and get our ISO, right? So we've got that part. Let's insert the next. Let's insert the crank arm. Handle actually will work. That's like the twig, I think is what he calls it in the video. So we can get a front view of it, slide up, get a top view of it, click on that, get an ISO. Okay, we're just trying to get all the parts in for right now. We can kind of rearrange some stuff here in a second. And let's get the last piece, which would be the spacers, right? There's two of them, but we only need one in our drawing. So we'll put it over here on the far side, slide up, and then ISO. Okay. Now what I want to do is it's kind of all really jumbled together. So I want to try and get out of the projected view here. And I want to put them together as parts, right? Like this is a part, this is a part, this is a part. And this probably isn't best practice for professional drawings, but for our submission today, this is what I'm requiring of you, okay? We're going to throw a note in here and we're going to call it what this part is over here. This is the shaft, right? So we'll just type that in. We can up that height if you want to make it a little bit bigger, or if you want to bolden it, you can control everything and bold it if you want to. Probably wouldn't be bad. So this is the shaft. This section right here is our crank arm. Crank arm. I'll select everything and bold that. And if you want it to be all one, you can kind of lengthen it right here. Right, we got our crank arm in this section. This section right here is going to be the crank handle. I'll just call it the handle. You can call it, he calls it the twig in the video, whatever you want to go with there, as long as it describes it. And then you want your spacer. Spacer. There we go. So select everything there, bold it, we're good to go. All right, so there's our spacer. Get out of this, so I can kind of move some stuff around. Now, I really need to just organize it a little bit better, right? So let's kind of get the spacer over here together with itself, right? It's all together. The handle, we can kind of get it together and identified as one, and then the crank arm can kind of occupy this space here. So we're just trying to space stuff together so it's not as separate, right? We'll put stuff that's close together. And you might have to move some other stuff around just to get space for your dimensions as well, right? So you're going to add dimensions to the left, not to the isometric view, but obviously you'd be adding dimensions to the other parts, right? So don't forget to do your dimensions, how tall this is, things like that. What's the diameters of these parts in here, which should be really easy dimension things to add, right? You don't need a whole lot of dimensions for these. I'll go ahead and add them. It doesn't really take very long, right? This one I'd like to maybe know how tall the whole thing is, right? From like center circle to center circle, stuff like that, right? What's the length from this point to this point? Maybe this point to this point. The crank arm is probably the most complex shape that we have, right? So just make sure you're adding all of your parts, dimensions, and don't forget this. I forgot to do this with the other parts. Remember to right click on these and make them shaded so we can kind of get a better view of what they look like. Let's see the shaded view of these. There we go. And that looks pretty nice, right? We got all our dimensions. We got all 4 of our new parts. Make it look the best that you can. Don't worry too much about everything that's going down here. What it's going to do is it's going to automatically import the first piece that you inserted. So it's giving you all the information on the shaft, that it's made out of balsa wood. That's what I selected it to be because that's what ours are going to be made out of. But I'm not really too concerned about all of this down here because it's automatically going to populate your first item. And so the mass of the shaft is 0.002 pounds. But the rest of all this stuff, it's not going to, don't worry about it. Okay. What I'm really looking for in your submission is that you have all 4 of these parts dimensioned and brought in a nice big drawing screenshot that bad boy or um, and insert that into your submission. All right, and that's all you have to do after you create that part. So you should have after this, you should have this assembly that will be able to animate. You can grab that twig and you can rotate that around, and then you should also have this drawing that we just created like this. But this is the only thing that you have to submit for your submission. But you can't really draw this unless you have that assembly and everything together. All right, that's all I got. I hope this was helpful. You making that drawing later.